The year is 1946. A brand new baby girl comes into the world. She's one of 12 kids in a family so poor that the story says her mom and dad paid the doctor who helped deliver her with just a bag of cornmeal. That little girl was Dolly Rebecca Parton, a name that would someday shine on big signs, theaters, movie screens, and concert stages all around the world. Jump ahead many years, and Dolly Parton isn't just a country music singer. She's a superstar. She sold over 100 million albums around the world, won 11 Grammy Awards out of almost 50 times being picked, built Dollywood into one of America's favorite theme parks, and even started a reading charity, the Imagination Library, that has given away over 200 million free books to kids. But behind the fake hair, sparkly jewels, and funny jokes, Dolly has been living two different lives. For 30 years, she created a sparkly public person that everyone thought they understood while carefully hiding another quieter self away from the cameras. That difference, that push and pull between Dolly the famous person and Dolly the regular woman is what makes her story so interesting. This isn't about bad secrets or lying. It's about staying strong. It's about a girl from the Smoky Mountains who learned early that sometimes you have to act a certain way in public to keep safe what really matters in your private life. Dolly Parton's famous song may have been called Coat of Many Colors, but her life was put together with way more layers than anyone ever guessed. To understand Dolly's two different lives, we first need to understand just how far she traveled. Dolly Parton was born on January 19, 1946 in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, a really small place near Pittman Center in the Great Smoky Mountains. She was the fourth out of 12 kids born to Robert Lee Parton, a farmer and construction worker, and Avi Lee Parton, who held the family together through music and faith. The story says that the Partons were so short on money when Dolly was born that her dad paid the doctor with a bag of cornmeal. Dolly herself has told this story with a laugh many times, never hiding where she came from. Being poor, actually, would later inspire some of her most famous songs like Coat of Many Colors, written about the patched-up coat her mom sewed together from old scraps. Life in that one-room house was packed, loud, and full of music. Avi Lee taught her kids old mountain folk songs, and Dolly soaked up the church songs she heard on Sundays. By the time she was 10, she was already singing on local radio shows in Knoxville. And by age 13, she made her first performance at the Grand Ole Opry, brought on stage by none other than Johnny Cash. Even back then, Dolly knew where she was going. She once said, "I always knew I was meant for more than a cabin in the woods. I just didn't know how far I'd have to go to get there." Keeping her promise, the very day after she finished high school in 1964, she packed her stuff and moved to Nashville, ready to chase her dream. The early years weren't simple. Nashville was packed with people wanting to be stars, and Dolly's high mountain singing voice wasn't exactly the popular sound of that time. But never giving up was her secret power. She signed with Monument Records, at first pushed toward pop music, but quickly found her place in country. Her big break came when Porter Wagoner, the star of The Porter Wagoner Show, invited her to join him on TV in 1967. That partnership made Dolly famous everywhere. Together, they recorded songs as a duo, traveled across the country, and built tons of fans. But behind the big smiles and matching outfits, Dolly was already showing she had another life inside her, one where she didn't want to be anyone's helper. In 1974, Dolly made the hard choice to leave Wagoner's show to go after a solo career. To make it easier, she wrote I Will Always Love You, a goodbye song that would become one of the most famous songs in history. That one move shows Dolly's two lives perfectly. Sweet on the outside, but based on tough choices, big dreams, and the need to decide things for herself. The girl who started with nothing but a cornmeal birth payment was now well on her way to becoming a star. But being a star needed more than a good voice. It needed a carefully planned look. And that's where Dolly's other life really started to grow. If you ask Dolly Parton about her style, she'll tell you straight up. It costs a lot of money to look this cheap. That funny line delivered with a wink shows the smart plan behind her look. In the 1970s, country music was still ruled by men in cowboy hats, and women expected to act sweet and quiet. Dolly decided to change all that. She piled her hair into super tall wigs, painted her lips bright red, and wore sparkly dresses that shined like a disco ball under stage lights. She once admitted that her look came from what she called the town tramp back home. A woman people whispered about, but remembered for being bold. Dolly thought, if that's trashy, then trashy sure looks fun. But here's the secret. Dolly's sparkles were not just about fashion. It was like armor. By creating Dolly Parton, the big hair, the curvy dresses, the over-the-top girly look, she gave audiences something so amazing to look at that they often forgot to dig deeper. Behind that armor, Dolly could keep her private life exactly that, private. She took this so seriously that she has admitted to sleeping in her makeup.
Why?
Because if a fire or an earthquake happened in the middle of the night, she wanted to be ready to meet people without breaking the magic spell. Imagine caring that much about your look. It sounds tiring, but for Dolly, it was survival in a business quick to call women washed up the moment they looked too normal. Of course, Dolly turned the attention to her advantage. When gossip magazines guessed about plastic surgery, she beat them to it with a joke. If something's bagging, sagging, or dragging, I'll tuck it, suck it, or pluck it, she once joked. In doing that, she flipped weakness into jokes, staying in control of the story. But maybe the most interesting part is how she balanced being open with keeping secrets. Dolly could talk for hours about her wigs, her makeup routine, or even her big chest. But when it came to the more personal parts of her life, her marriage, her struggles, her faith, she closed the curtain. Fans thought they knew her, but the truth is they only knew the version she wanted them to see. This balancing act wasn't lying. It was a plan. By building Dolly the spectacle, she protected Dolly the soul. She carved out a space where she could survive the pressures of being famous, stay in charge of her career, and still keep her deepest truth safe. And yet, as we'll see, Dolly's opposite sides only grew. She was the glittering queen of country, but she was also the woman who shocked fans by appearing in Playboy. She was a strong Christian, writing gospel music while also chasing success on the pop and rock charts. She was generous and giving, but also smartly business-minded, turning herself into a brand many years before that became normal. The wig and the sparkly jewels weren't just a look. They were the mask that let her live two lives. One for the world and one for herself. By the time the sparkly jewels were blinding and the wigs reached super tall heights, Dolly Parton had built herself into a brand. But every brand has its small details. And Dolly's was written in invisible ink. Let's start with the biggest mystery, her marriage. Dolly Parton married Carl Thomas Dean on May 30, 1966. The ceremony was tiny, just Dolly, Carl, her mom, the preacher, and the preacher's wife. Carl was her partner for almost 6 decades. Yet for most fans, he's like a ghost. He almost never shows up in public, never goes to red carpets, and the man has said no to interviews so much he could win an Olympic gold medal. This made endless guessing happen. Was he real? Were they secretly divorced? Was Dolly hiding some secret romantic life? She leaned into the rumors with humor, once joking that people thought she had a fake person in the closet she called Carl. In reality, Carl simply hated the spotlight. While Dolly was building Dollywood, touring big stadiums, and starring in 9 to 5, Carl was running a road paving company and living a quiet life in Nashville. That difference is so huge. Dolly dazzling in sequins, Carl in work boots at home. It was one of the clearest examples of her two different lives. And then there's Dolly's faith. She's never hidden from talking about her Christianity. Growing up in the Smokies, gospel music was woven into her blood. She's released multiple gospel albums and says she prays every day. Yet in 1978, Dolly shocked traditional fans when she posed for Playboy. She didn't pose naked. She wore the famous bunny suit, ears and all, but the idea of a gospel-singing country girl appearing in Playboy was almost shocking. Dolly brushed it off, later laughing that she did it because she looked kind of cute back then and wanted to show off while she could. That opposite, Bible in one hand, bunny ears in the other, is pure Dolly. She never fit nicely into one box. And maybe that's the answer. The two different lives weren't about hiding sins. It was about refusing to be locked down. Her music tells the same story. Remember that on one single night in 1973, she wrote 2 of her biggest songs, Jolene and I Will Always Love You. One is about jealousy and temptation. The other is about gentle goodbye. To create such different emotions in one sitting hints at how many emotional worlds Dolly was handling at once. Then there's her business empire. Fans see Dollywood as a theme park filled with roller coasters and cinnamon bread. But behind the curtain, Dolly is a smart businesswoman. She owns multiple companies under the Dollywood name, has invested in media businesses, and has built her brand with perfect precision. Yet, she downplays this side of herself, often pretending to be just a country girl while making multi-million-dollar choices. That's another form of her two different lives, the smart CEO hidden beneath the sparkly gowns. And let's not forget giving to others. Dolly's Imagination Library, started in 1995, has mailed over 200 million free books to children across the world. She has paid for hospitals, scholarships, and famously gave $1 million toward COVID-19 vaccine research at Vanderbilt University. Yet, she's always quick to make light of her kindness, saying she doesn't do it for praise. Dolly once said, "I just think it's important to give back if you've been blessed, and I've been more blessed than I ever deserved." Still, even her giving has a double edge. The public sees the kindness. Dolly sees a mission based on her childhood poverty and her faith, the side of her life she often keeps quieter. So by the 1980s and 90s, Dolly was living on two tracks, one blindingly public, one strongly private, and both were working in harmony. But here's the thing, keeping up two lives isn't easy, which makes you wonder, why did she hold on to that separation for so long? Living two lives may sound glamorous, but in reality, it's more like juggling fire. Dolly managed it for decades. And the reasons go deeper than wigs and smart comebacks. First, there's the huge pressure of fame. Imagine waking up every day knowing millions of people feel they deserve your story, your secrets, your heartbreaks. Dolly understood early that fame can eat you alive if you don't set boundaries. By creating a glittering version of herself, she gave fans something to feast on while keeping the tender parts of her heart locked away. It was self-protection in sequins. Second, let's talk about being a woman. Dolly entered country music in the 1960s when women were often expected to be sweet, obedient, and second place. By making her girliness bigger, the makeup, the wigs, the humor about her body, she grabbed control of the joke before anyone else could use it against her. When critics called her too flashy, she laughed louder. When they made fun of her chest, she turned it into a joke. That's power. And that look let her climb ladders that might have otherwise been pulled away. Third, there's control. Dolly wasn't just a singer. She was a songwriter and businesswoman. She owns her publishing rights. A move that got her millions when Whitney Houston's version of "I Will Always Love You" became one of the best-selling singles of all time. She knew that to stay in control of her music and her money, she had to play the long game. The public Dolly distracted the world, while the private Dolly signed contracts, built empires, and played chess while everyone else thought she was playing checkers. But make no mistake, the two different lives carried risks. Keeping secrets meant creating rumors. For decades, gossip magazines guessed about everything from her sexuality to her marriage to supposed love affairs with co-stars. Dolly brushed these off with humor, saying, "People are always talking. If they're talking about me, at least they're leaving someone else alone." Still, the mental cost of always dodging, always editing your answers must have been heavy.